I will never forget the first time I was introduced to In the Heights. Back in 2006, I booked a workshop of a brand new Broadway bound Latinx show. My agent said the show had a lot of potential and already had a lot of producing interest behind it. He said that the show was written by this new prodigy who just recently graduated and who's Puerto Rican, and the show combines hip hop with pop, Latin rhythms, and musical theater. It all sounded amazing, and of course, I was very interested, but having just had a very heartbreaking experience of another Broadway bound Latinx show that got canceled 2 days prior to starting rehearsals, I was very skeptical and scared. Scared because I wasn't sure how the American audiences would receive a show about us. We had not received any materials prior to the workshop, no script, no score, so I had no idea if the show was even any good. And there we are on the first day of school, sitting around the table, and I see a lot of familiar faces of people with whom I've worked with before, and I see new faces. Across the table from me, there's this guy named Lin Manuel Miranda, and then next to him, there's Karen Olivo, and then there's Mandy Gonzalez, and there's Andrea Burns. No big deal. So we open our scripts and scores, and behind the piano, there's Alex Lagamore. And the music starts, and the first thing we hear is La Clave. This is the heartbeat of any Latin rhythm. And then lights up on Washington Heights, about the break of day, and so on and so forth. And then I hear Piragua. And then I hear Parcha, China, Cherry, Strawberry. And then I hear Abuela and Café con Leche, Paciencia y Fe, No Me Digas, Carnaval, Alza la Bandera. And for the first time in a very long time in my career, I felt like I was home. In the heights, I hang my flag upon this day. Hola a todos, my name is Marco Santana. I am the director and choreographer of Westport Country Playhouse's 2019 production of In the Heights. I am honored to be hosting the very first episode of the new series From Concept to Curtain, where we will be bringing you a behind-the-scenes look of the creative process of putting a show on stage. This particular episode is called In the Heights Beyond El Barrio. I have gathered my fantastic creative team composed of set designer Adam Koch, lighting designer Maria Cristina Fuste, costume designer Fabiana Aguilar, and music director Dan Green. We sat down and talked about their creative process, their inspirations, and all the challenges that came along putting together In the Heights. Thank you for watching, and we hope you enjoy In the Heights Beyond El Barrio. Mom and Pop, stop this shop, and oh my God, it's got it gone. Like my man, go for the set.
Yes, I was born in Puerto Rico, San Juan, Puerto Rico, and I currently live in New York City.
I am originally from Boston, Massachusetts, and I live in Brooklyn.
I'm from Dayton, Ohio.
I was conceived in Mexico and born in Texas, like margaritas.
I went to the University of Puerto Rico and got my bachelor's in theater, just a general in everything about theater. And then I came to New York City to get my master's in lighting design from NYU, the design department at NYU.
Well, like many theater folks, I got inspired early by seeing all kinds of things. I was really lucky to have mom and dad that took me to all kinds of theater, and that turned into an obsession with doing it in elementary school and high school. And finally, some representatives from different universities came to see a couple high school shows and offered me to go to Carnegie Mellon, which is in Pittsburgh, and that's where I studied. And then moved to New York to become an associate.
I had a really roundabout journey to costume design because I went to Boston University for undergrad as a psychology major.
Wow.
Yeah, like 75% of college majors at that time. And 2 years into the program, I got really disenchanted with the program because I just got disengaged with the learning that I was receiving, and to fulfill a humanities course took an introduction to costume design class for fun, and the teacher was like, "You're pretty good at this," and I was like, "Oh, maybe I'll switch." And so I switched, and then worked in Boston. Then I worked in advertising and marketing for a while, And despite the great pay and benefits, I was missing the creativity I experienced in costume design. So I quit my job, did that full time, and then went to the Yale School of Drama for my MFA. And the rest has been New York history.
Okay, we got traffic on the west side. Get off the 79 and take the left side. The Riverside Drive, you might slide. Weston's your best friend if you catch the line.
The first time I heard about In the Heights, I was in college in Chicago. And I think I heard It Won't Be Long Now. And I actually, this is is not going to make me look good, but my first thought was, oh, that sounds like something I could have written, which is not true. But at the time, I was like, oh, but it was very much my style, and it was something I was really into it. And I remember thinking that Karen Olivo sounded like a Disney princess when she had that dialogue about like, after Nina's dinner, we can blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, this is so fun and cute. And then turns out the rest of the soundtrack is like, It Won't Be Long Now is actually a little different than a lot of the rest of the music in the show. But that was my introduction. And then, I just fell in love with the whole thing and listened to it on repeat for years.
It was very difficult for me to understand a show about Washington Heights. Is this going to work? Who's going to want to hear about our community? And I was surprised that the show was a big hit. Gladly surprised that it was a big hit.
The first time I heard In the Heights was probably for listening to it to do this production, or maybe a production before that, but it was definitely work related. And in that way that, shows become so popular and you don't quite get a run-in with them yet, but I knew it was coming down the line at some point. So by the time someone called, I listened to it and was really blown away because I had heard so much about it.
Because listening to the audio was my first introduction to the show, really. And just knowing the stories immediately and the flow was like, even remembering it right now, I get a little choked up with Nina's story. Yeah, that, like in all of these characters, I see my family, I see me and my siblings growing up, my own, going to colleges, and a family that doesn't really have that, or immigrant parents that came to America to give their children the best that they could. The most beautiful feeling about this show, I think, was how close it hit to home and how beautiful and colorful that could be. I think was the magic for me.
My work life has been a happy chain of mostly musicals or musical-based projects, and that's good because I'm primarily inspired by music. And In the Heights and Lin-Manuel, is exceptional score and exceptional music and a great book to go along with it. But the music has to be the gateway in. My
process starts with reading the script, reading it several times, listening to the music, getting into it, and then doing some what I call inspirational research, which is research, just spontaneous ideas, images that come to my mind when I'm reading, when I'm listening to the music.
When I'm working on a project, my process is mostly just to make sure that the composer gets whatever they want. And I usually work on a lot of new work. And so working on In the Heights was kind of a different experience for me because the score was already done and everything was already there on the page. And so that was kind of a new process for me because it was already all there. And then it just became, how can I kind of best express what's on the page for everyone in the company and the audience?
The way I approach my creative process always starts with reading the text and then just sitting with the words first, is just picking up what the literature is bringing to mind, what's popping into my head. And then I'll start to dive into the research.
Yeah, finding creativity in music directing a piece that's pre-existing can be tricky. And I think it's always sort of a balancing act because on the one hand, the audience comes in with a set of expectations because they've already heard the In the Heights cast recording, a lot of them. And if it differs significantly from that, they're going to want their money back or be like, what is this thing that doesn't sound like what I thought it was going to be? But you also don't want to, you know, if it's exactly the same, then why even do another production of it? And I know that, you know, you've thought about that a lot, Marcos, in terms of your direction. And so I think the way that I was able to bring a little creativity to it is probably just in terms of the orchestra's role as accompanying the performers. And so, you know, getting to play with someone like Didi or Rodolfo, these younger generation, and letting them kind of put their own stamp on the material. And I think my role in music directing was to kind of try to support those actors as they found their way through the material and let it be something that was both accurate but also authentically them.
My design process for this really started with just seeing the people and just sitting in the neighborhood, getting a feel for it and seeing the things that would pop out, the colors or the textures in the jeans that I would constantly see, or the tightness in the shirts and the way that the hair was happening. You know, I went into a cafe to buy a donut and the woman in front of me was still in her curlers from the salon next door, dripping hair dye on her shoulders, but she's just waiting for her iced coffee and donut. I loved it. So that was my research.
So this is what I think about the information I have in my head. I have a lot of information of colors, feelings, of life experiences from being in Puerto Rico, for traveling to other Latin American countries, being at the Dominican Republic, and you store all that visual and emotional feelings and images in your head. And then since I have them, I was able to put them, at least I tried to put them on stage.
One of the first things we were talking about in my introduction to the show, which was kind of as a newbie at the time, I heard the infamous urban legend of how Lin-Manuel was walking down the neighborhood and heard all these snatches of different music through the different windows, and how that kind of collaged together to become this new form of music and a new story that kind of celebrated how all those different cultures interweave in Washington Heights. And that kind of parallels the collage aspect of the set, which is all different kinds of colors and signs and things all kind of weaving together to make this mega set.
The most challenging part for the lighting department, I would say, it was trying to figure out the right lighting equipment that could be used in the space due to the restrictions and just the way the theater is and the power demands that this required. I remember that it was very tough. We needed certain angles. We needed the moving lights where, I wanted them in order to achieve certain looks. And the theater had to get more power, like more capability, power-wise, in order to accommodate this. And I remember one day, one of the movers, there was like some spark up there by the balcony.
Remember that, yeah.
Smell of something burning, and it had to do with that. We were still, and this happened in the middle of tech, I think.
In the Heights is a challenging show to pull off. That's part of what makes it so good. And so we definitely had our share of challenging moments, especially, the music is very difficult. I had a hard time learning to play all of it. Not all of us are Alex Lacamoire. And so I really had to bust my ass getting my chops ready for it. And, just getting all the music together was a challenge, especially, the cast works on it for however many weeks in a row, but then you have to bring in the musicians at the last minute, essentially. And so getting everyone on the same page so that all of a sudden when the lights go down, it sounds like this amazing, Afro-Cuban band that's been playing together for years. That was a tricky sleight of hand to pull off. It was also a technologically challenging show. And so I know that we had to kind of do some stuff that Westport wasn't necessarily used to doing. I remember having the conversation about needing mics for the Sitz probe, which is not something that they were used to having to do. And they were just going to have everybody sing, unmiked. and we had to say that's for this, you can't do 96,000 and have all these like tracks and loops going and everything and then expect people to try to scream over it. So there was just some new technology we had to figure out. And again, it was tough for some of the musicians to get on board right from the very first rehearsal. And so, there were some moments where I know that we were all wondering if it was going to come together, but that's live theater, right? And of course it did by the end.
Yeah, I think in costuming a contemporary show like In the Heights, the challenge does become the fact that it's contemporary clothes for a number of reasons. One is that everybody knows what contemporary clothes are like. You wear it every day, so you also deal with a lot more opinions of what it does. But on the other side too, it is in a tricky way. It seems simple because you can just go to a store and buy something. But it becomes more complicated, not only because there's so many different cuts of clothes and the fiber contents, the way that they hug different body shapes. But if you have a cast that's a lot of body shapes, and you have to sample all of those things, because you're also looking at how that color is going to read on stage, how that color is going to live next to the other colors on stage with it, under the stage lights, on that scene, that scenery.
The most challenging part of In the Heights was essentially the complexity of how tight the show has to be, not only for the Westport stage, but just how much of a Rubik's Cube the production is as far as all the little things it needs. So it was mostly a logistical challenge as opposed to an artistic one. I didn't have a question about what it should look like or how it should feel, but the logistics of getting essentially New York City onto a tiny stage is always a challenge. And I think anyone who produces In the Heights eventually realizes how complex New York City as a setting is, because New York City is, by its nature, a very complex visual. It's all kinds of signs and poles and things sticking out, and it's totally random. And that's very hard to do on stage effectively.
The biggest challenge for me as a choreographer for In the Heights was that during the first week of rehearsals, I actually hurt myself really bad. I was teaching one of the numbers and I heard a pop on my foot. I knew it was going to be bad because I couldn't move, so I took a deep breath and then I sat down on a chair and continued the rehearsals like nothing happened. The show must go on. Unfortunately, after I went to the doctor, I tore my plantar fascia. So I was in a boot and crutches for the rest of the rehearsals. Luckily, I had the best associate choreographer, Allison Solomon, with whom I've worked with before, and we did a lot of pre-production prior to the rehearsal. So she knew the material. And thanks to her and a rolling desk chair, I was able to finish the show on time.
I've done differently is a question that I ask myself about everything all the time. So, I'm thinking the whole time, I think I was kind of trying to preemptively ask myself that the whole time that we were in rehearsals, because I was kind of obsessively, In the Heights is such a complicated show that I was very obsessive about, like, what am I forgetting? What is going to bite me in the ass later? Like, what are we not prepared for? And I was so lucky. I want to give a shout out to Chris Gurr, because he was our associate music director, and he would not have happened without him. And he made sure that all of the things that I would have screwed up on, he kind of was there to make sure that they happened. And so that fixed a lot of things that I would have had to do differently if not for him being there. I think, we didn't quite know how we were going to pull off some of the musical elements. And I know that we had some scrambling about like, what were we going to do for like the finale recording, or some of those loops that we didn't have, and trying to track those down took a little longer. I wish that I had started some of that earlier. And I think I maybe was too optimistic about how the band was going to come together, and I should have been a little more on top of that earlier in the process, and just making sure, that I was vetting all of the players really carefully and making sure that everybody had what they needed and that they were like prepared to kind of come in and nail it, because there's just not really any time to get up to speed with something like this. You just have to do it right away.
There were two specific characters that I would want to readdress, and that was always Benny's set look for Act Two was a big one for me, where I felt like I feel I didn't capture the character. I didn't get him at the time, and it was Act Two, and we were trying to deal with other elements of things, so I didn't get to focus on him as much as I would have liked. So him and Graffiti Pete, I was pretty happy with Graffiti Pete, but I still feel like there was places that I wanted to go further with him that I didn't get the opportunities.
I mean, the honest answer is, because it's true, is that when you order a Mylar curtain, it's not opaque when it's down. I'm dead serious. This gets me every time. And you can even spring for the triple layer, but when it falls in, it's not hiding what's behind it. And so there's always this big dream that the thing is going to trip in, like going into the club, and that what would be upstage is completely a dark, shimmering void, when really it's kind of black tendrils, and you just see the set upstage of it. And so I've always, it's one of those little things you learn along the way.
I think I would like to focus more on Abuela Claudia's perspective and maybe use that as a starting point in terms of color palette, her experience, her relationships, family. I think I would like to try that as a starting point for my inspiration and how to design the show.
Everything is easier with your home. The streets a little kinder with your home.
For me, if I had to describe in one word my inspiration for this show, for In the Heights at Westport, it would be amor, love, definitivamente.
If I could describe the process in one word, it would be exuberant. How's that for a word? I think
that's a great word.
Everybody, sometimes we were kind of racing to keep up with everything, but everyone from the producers on down just approached everything with such kind of infectious enthusiasm and exuberance. So that would be my word for it.
For it would be essentially a version of home. Home is the word, because in that sense of home changes from the beginning to the end.
Colores.
Colors, yeah.
Yeah, I would say my biggest inspiration was Los Colores. I mean, I started with some collages of pictures of Washington Heights and other things, images that I had found on the internet, but what always jumped up to me was the patterns or touches of vibrancy that I would see in the people. Because, New York City is a great concrete jungle. And to see how lively the textures and clothes can be that people put on to go through this jungle was to me the biggest inspiration for this show.
It's very difficult for me to pick just one favorite moment in the show. There are so many. But one moment that always stuck with me, even when I was performing the show on Broadway, was the finale, the part where the hydrants are opening. The combination of the music, the lyrics, and the symbolism of a brand new day starting, and the sun shining and taking over the darkness, and the water opening, the hydrants opening and spilling all the water and refreshing everything. It's like the start of a new day. It's the start of a new chapter for everybody. It's the perfect way to stay home.
The most emotional part of the show, that doesn't necessarily underscored by scenery, but is in a way, is the explosion of Carnival, which is the height of the joy and happiness, and just like really a very transcendent moment on stage musically. I think, despite it just being a little neighborhood block party, it really explodes into something beautiful.
Some of my favorite moments of the show, I really love the club. That's sort of from a selfish point of view, because that's a point where the orchestra gets to play a long time uninterrupted by singing. And so we just get to lay out and have a great time. That was always fun every night. I love especially the top of It Won't Be Long Now, that little piano riff, because that's the first song that I ever heard from In the Heights, and I always loved that. And it was fun to finally get to play it for a reason for the first time.
My favorite moment was definitely Paciencia y Fe. It was it's that kind of theater magic that I love. Of we've been sitting in a modern New York City, and then like boom, we go into a memory play. And that's when I had removed all the saturation in the color, so everything became soft sage and like succulent plants, and the browns to also just embrace our skin tones too. So it just became this beautiful wash of creams and sage and browns and 1940s Cuba, and it just was such a transformative moment for the silhouette and the textures and the clothing, as well as the music and the lights and the story. So it was one of the things that I could sit in that moment for another 2 years.
I think it's very difficult to pinpoint just one favorite moment of the show, because I have to say I enjoy the show from the beginning to end. But on this production, something that was extremely exciting, exhilarating, explosive to me, it was 96,000. Now 96,000 is a very long song that has several sections within it, and we didn't have the time to like be very, very particular with the cues. I have time to go back and look at it again and again and again. To my surprise, we cued that song from the beginning to end, and then when we ran it, we were like, boom, because it was just so many. It was very, I don't know how to say it, just your eye just went like this, and you could feel it in the
Get the dough and once we get going, we're never gonna try to get started. Get the dough, try to get started. Once we get going, try to get started. Get the dough and once we get going, we're never gonna stop.
Thank you so much to my phenomenal creative team for their time with this episode and their tireless dedication to the production of In the Heights. We hope you enjoy In the Heights Beyond El Barrio, and we'll see you next time on From Concept to Curtain.